In this video, I will be showing you how to make a cardboard loom. For this, you'll first of all need a piece of cardboard, and ideally it should be about the size or a little bit larger than an A4 piece of paper. You will also need a ruler, a pair of scissors, a glue stick or some double-sided tape if you have that at home, and I will be using a Sharpie, but you might want to use a pencil instead to draw out your marks. Now the first thing we need to do is to start to measure out the base for our loom. Now the loom that we are going to make is going to be roughly the size of an A4 piece of paper. And on your card, before we begin, don't worry if you've got these folds like you can see on mine. That is fine. You just want to make sure that your cardboard is in good condition. It's not too battered, not too broken, but a few folds here and there are fine. Now, to measure out our base for our loom, we're going to work with the long side first of all, which is going to be 25 centimeters across. So you want to take your ruler and just draw a line 25 centimeters long. Our loom is going to be 18 centimeters wide, so we need to turn our card round and then mark 18 centimeters coming along from one end of that line that we have just made. Don't worry if your box is not super exact. We do have a little bit of leeway with this as our base. We're going to have a little bit of space around the edges, but for the most part try and keep it as close to 18 centimeters wide and 25 centimeters long as possible. And once you've joined up your last line, you have now got the rectangle which is going to serve as the main part of our loom. We also need to draw out a box to give us a couple of strips, which is going to help us as we work on weaving, and they're going to be the width of our loom. So you might have a little bit of space on the end of your cardboard. I don't, so I'm just going to move to this bit underneath, and I'm going to measure out 18 centimeters across so that it is the same width as our loom. And going to have it 5 centimeters along. Now, as you draw your 5 centimeter line coming from one end of the first line that you've made, mark out the halfway point, which will be 2.5 centimeters. This will help you when we split this, because this is going to become two strips, one for the top and one for the bottom. Once you've done that, do the same thing on the other side, so 5 centimeters along, and make a little mark halfway, and then one more line just to join that up. Once you've drawn the box, you can just take your ruler, line it up with those halfway points that you've just made, and draw a line across so that you can see that you will then have two strips of cardboard. Now the next thing we need to do, we can just put our pen to the side for the moment. We want to take our scissors and cut everything out. So cutting out those strips of cardboard, making sure to remember to cut that centre line so that you've got 2 strips, and then cutting out the main rectangle as well. And you should have your rectangle and 2 strips of card at this point now. Now we can just put those 2 strips that you're going to go along the top and along the bottom. We don't actually need those until later, so we can just move those and put those to the side for one moment. And we're going to continue working on our main rectangle for the time being. Now we need to mark along the top and bottom edge where we are going to cut to make these little cardboard tabs. So we need to grab our ruler and grab your pen or pencil, line it up along the short edge, which was the 18cm edge, and we need to mark the centre point, which should be 9cm along. So make a little mark at the centre point. This is just going to help us make sure that everything is lined up on the top and on the bottom. Once you've made it on one side, turn your cardboard around, line it back up with your ruler, and do the same thing again. So marking the centre point, which should be 9cm along. And if you want, you can use your ruler just to check to see if they line up. And then we're going to come back and put our ruler back along that edge, making sure that we've still got our centre point lined up. And we're going to start making some marks for where we're going to be cutting our little tabs for when we start weaving. Now, we need to leave some space on either end so that our loom is as stable as possible. So if you just mark 2 centimetres on one side and then go along to the other side and mark another 2 centimetres. These can act as our guidelines so that we make sure to not make any marks and not make any cuts beyond that point. And then we're going to come back to our centre and we're going to make a mark every ½ centimetre or every 5mm. Just working from the centre point, coming out towards the edge and making sure not to go beyond that 2 centimetre guide that we've just made. You should find that that 2 centimetre guide lines up perfectly with where your next mark should go. If it doesn't, for whatever reason, you might need to just add or move that end mark slightly so that you've got one more mark along the edge. Otherwise, if it does line up, you could just use that mark as your as the edge of your piece. And then you're going to go back to the centre and start marking out towards the edge again, another 5mm each time. Once you've done it to the top, you need to turn your cardboard piece around and do the same thing along the other edge. So line your ruler back up, mark out that 2 centimetres on each side, and then you can come to the middle and start marking out every ½ centimetre. Just need to make a little line for each ½ centimetre, and that's just going to help you make sure that you've got all of your cardboard tabs, which we're going to make in just a moment, spread out nice and evenly. And you can see we've now got them spread neatly across the top and bottom edge with a little bit of space on either side so that we're not going to kind of damage or break the edge of our loom. Now the next thing to do is to cut these tabs. Before we do that, to make sure that these tabs are going to be the same depth so that we don't end up with one which is very short or very long, I'm just going to take my ruler and I'm going to measure out 1 centimetre down from that top edge. Then I'm going to move along and do that on the other side, and I'm just going to use my ruler to line up those marks and make a line which is going to act as a guide to tell me where to cut to. Now all of those notches can then be cut coming up to that line and no further. Going to do the same thing on the other side. So just going to line my ruler up, mark out 1 centimetre, do it again on the other side, and then line up those marks and make my line. Once you've done that, you can just put your pen and your ruler to the side. We no longer need that. And I'm going to pick up our scissors again. And we're just going to start cutting each of those marks that we've made, cutting them to that 1 centimetre line that we have just drawn. Make sure that as you're doing this you are actually cutting the lines that you've marked earlier, which are ½ centimetre apart. That's, as I said, going to make sure that they are spread nice and evenly across, and you should be able to see, it's a little bit difficult in the video, but you should be able to see that there are these little cardboard tabs now, which later on we'll be adding some string to, which will help us as we start to weave. For now, just need to be cutting every mark along each of the edges, so working along the top edge and then working along the bottom edge, making sure that they all come to that 1 centimetre line that you just drew out. Now you should have a piece of cardboard which has got these cardboard tabs cut along the top and the bottom now. So next we need to bring our strips of cardboard across. As I said earlier, one's going to go to the top and one's going to go to the bottom. So if you've got tape at home, double-sided tape, you might wish to use that. As you can see, I'm using a glue stick instead, which works just as well. And you just want to take one of your cardboard tabs, add glue or add tape to one side, and then you're going to stick that to your loom, and the edge of it should line up with that 1 centimetre line that you were using earlier. So it should sit just below the cardboard tabs that you've just cut. So stick that down. As you can see, it should fit all the way across, and then once you have done that with the first one, you are going to do the same thing with the second one. So a bit more glue or a bit more tape, and then sticking that to the other end of your loom, again making sure that it is lined up with that 1 centimetre line that we were using earlier. So stick that down into place, and then you have actually finished your loom. So you can just put your glue, put your tape away, make sure that they obviously dry so that it is stuck in place, you'd like to kind of continue pressing it down just to make sure that you've got the space you need. And now you've got your cardboard loom, which we will be using for weaving after the Easter holidays.